Hello! Big news from our friends over at DistroKid. They now have an app. This app works on iOS and Android, of course, and it's available in the Apple Store and Google Play stores and all the stores where you buy apps. Go check it out. It's got a lot of cool features. You can upload new releases, you can get notified when you've earned royalties. Awesome. You can withdraw from the app via push notifications. A little dangerous for me, but rad. Anyways, go check it out. It's all at distrokid.com/app. And don't forget, you can still get 30% off your DistroKid account by going to distrokid.com/VIP/tour stories. Have a great one. We would like to celebrate our friends and supporters over at isotope.com. Fine makers of audio software for repair, mixing, and mastering. You know their goods: RX10, Neutron 4, Ozone 11, Nectar 4. Chris and I love them, we use them, and we know you'll love them too. And right now they're having a New Year's sale on many of their software bundles. Go to isotope.com and check it all out. And use code RUIN10 when you check out to get your discount. Again, it's izotope.com. And enjoy. Hello, Tour Story listeners. Thank you for your continued support, and welcome to Season 4. I'd like to take a second to thank our friends and sponsors over at Isotope. Here at Ruinous, Chris and I rely heavily on easy-to-use tools like RX and Ozone for all of our audio repair, mixing, and mastering. Now, Tour Story listeners can get 10% off Isotope plugins or try Music Production Suite Pro for free for 30 days using code FRET10. That's FRET10. To get your discount and check out all of their easy-to-use products, go to isotope.com/ruinous. That's izotope.com/ruinous and use code FRET10. And thank you for listening. Hey, Gavin.
Hey, how are you?
Pretty good. How are you doing?
I'm okay. Yeah.
Where are you?
I am in my kitchen in Boston, Massachusetts.
Oh, man. I like Boston. I obviously haven't been there in a little while, but I typically go there at least once a year.
Yeah.
Last time I was there was my birthday. I played at the House of Blues on February 1st, 2020. I think that makes sense. Yeah.
Just under the wire of COVID.
Just under the wire, yeah.
Yeah.
How's Boston feeling, considering the last 2 years of our lives?
Well, I mean, I don't know if I'm a good judge of that at this point, just because I've been sort of isolated obviously with COVID, and I have 2 kids and some family issues, so it's hard for me to gauge. I can tell you that the roads are in terrible shape with potholes. More and more development is happening in neighborhoods that were formerly, inexpensive and full of young kids, not necessarily college kids, but younger people who are, in bands and so forth. And venues and practice spaces are seemingly dwindling.
Yeah.
It would seem, at least smaller venues.
Is TT the Bear still there?
TT's is gone.
Middle East still there?
Middle East is there, but it doesn't seem, at least not as far as I know, doesn't seem to have the same sort of community centered around indie rock or whatever that it seemed like it used to. Again, it could be thriving in certain areas. I don't know. But the Middle East is definitely not a place where I had been seeing shows over the last 10 years, really. There was a really great club called Great Scott in the neighborhood here, which unfortunately also closed. And then just down the street from me, they just are opening like a 3,500 capacity venue. So that's all well and good, but if you can't fill 3,500 people, so the small venues seem to be kind of disappearing. I think there's informal shows happening in maybe a record store or basements or something.
Yeah, one thing, it's sort of the same thing happening here in Seattle, but one thing that interestingly happened over the pandemic is the Crocodile Cafe. I don't know if you're familiar with it. Not
Yeah.
only moved, but greatly expanded into
Interesting.
I believe it's a 3-venue performance space now. And
Karate's going to play in one of those, I believe.
okay, great. Yeah.
So,
Well, I know, given the fact that we were involuntarily at home, us rock and roll people, did you find yourself doing anything you wouldn't expect musically over the last couple of years?
um, yes. And then that would be a virtual withdrawal from music making
Really?
to some extent. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was, I think it was sort of tied into where I was at, kind of sliding before the pandemic.
Uh-huh.
I had been playing in some bands, which I enjoyed. I think I started because of having kids and stuff like this. One of my kids is, a young teenager, and that's presenting problems and so forth. But I think then that was getting into this prospect of doing these long tours, overseas in some cases. And I was just kind of dreading it. Like I just didn't was sort of like, I don't know. I mean, I've done this a lot. And
Mm-hmm.
while I like the band and the people, it just seemed kind of daunting. And then the pandemic hit, and I was like, oh well, that takes care of that.
Right.
And there was a number of months where I just did not play drums at all. I'm sort of looking at myself, who am I? What's happening to me? What's happening to me? And even now, I played on a record. I did a small tour back in December, but even now, it's sort of like I gotta, pull myself to go play
Yeah.
for whatever reason, and I don't really know why. I mean, it doesn't at this point. It doesn't strike me as pandemic related.
Sure.
Um,
Right.
but then again, when I did go out on the road, I really did enjoy playing music. I was playing with this woman, Tali Zedek. I did enjoy playing the shows a lot.
Yeah. Well, one thing that did happen over the last couple of years is the release of all of the karate records with the Numero Group. Is that right?
Yeah. In the process, if they haven't released them all individually, and then we're working on a box set of, I
Okay.
guess it's going to be the last 3 records. So that's actually been really fantastic, and I think even more so for Jeff Farina, who's it's the bulk of his creative work, that we just couldn't access the masters, and we couldn't repress them. We couldn't get a royalty statement. It was just
Sure.
one of those, I guess, classic stories of
Yeah.
label misadventures. So the
Right.
opportunity to do it with Numero was great because their name precedes them, and they've done great things with a lot of great bands, at least in our milieu. And so that was super cool. And then the idea of playing shows came up, sort of instigated by this. I would guess, just that sort of coming full circle or something, or the records are now available again, and we just
Right.
seemed like we could have the opportunity to play. So
Right. So it came about mostly because you were kind of wondering what happened to your previous label.
well, yeah, I mean, Jeff had spent probably the better part of 10 years on and off trying to get in touch with whoever was left and get information about, well, where are the records. Do you owe us any money for digital streaming or sales? And then we would threaten with a lawyer. And one time that was successful in that we got paid some money.
Yeah.
Here's what we owe you for the last couple of years in terms of sales and digital sales. There was even times where like they were over the years would repress like one of like a single, or do a
Whoa.
pressing of, like, I remember there was a green vinyl copy of the first record that I think it was like, Jeff emailed saying, do you guys remember if we ever put out a green vinyl? So
Yeah.
it was really odd and really uncool. And it seemed like it was just one or two people that were incommunicado. And when they
Sure.
were, it was a bunch of, false promises about, oh yeah, I'm going to start giving you a statement every year or every 6 months or something. And that would just never materialize.
Right.
And finally, I guess they sort of relented, or they got tired of managing any part of it, and we got it all back.
You did, yeah.
And that was all, Jeff's relentless, fueled by, I think, his anger at the whole situation.
Yeah.
So that's been really great.
Good. Yeah. And I've had some similar experience with smaller labels and other bands I've played in.
Mm-hmm.
And I am not at all defending these labels, because I've been mad at a few of them too, with their lack of accounting and what I would consider laziness. But I think a lot of these older labels from the 90s got overwhelmed with having to account for digital, like the lack of physical sales and the increase in digital, but the teeny increments that they have to account for, etc. Again, not an excuse. I remember corresponding with someone about 3 years ago, and they were just like, I just lost the plot. That's why I don't account. I don't know. I probably owe you money. And it's like, fuck.
Yeah, I mean, I don't blame it. It's not something I would want to try to manage. That's for sure.
God. Yeah.
For one band, let alone like a roster of.
I know. Well, yeah. As you said, you're going out on tour. You said you're enjoying playing live. You have any apprehensions about hitting the road for a long period of time?
Well, I mean, I still have apprehensions about hitting the road for a long period of time. The karate stuff, I guess, by my standards, isn't a long period of time.
Oh, okay.
So, I guess initially I had some thoughts about, the nature of, I guess, quote unquote, reunion tours. And, from an audience perspective, I wonder if there's the potential for disappointment being built into the whole thing, because I would imagine there's going to be a lot of people there who remember us back in the day and really liked it, and now have this perhaps hopeful expectation that it will meet those memories. And I don't know if that's possible. I mean, you can't go back in time. You can't have the same experiences that you had when you were younger or when you liked a band. So I was a little apprehensive about that, saying, failure is built into this thing. But, I've sort of dialed that feeling back a little bit. And I mean, it's nostalgia on my part to some extent as well. I mean, just because it was like a band I was in for a long time with those guys, and, being at the age for myself where it was like I was developing as a player, and those guys were inspirational for me as developing as a player. And so, musically, it really means a lot to me in that time period, in that age. That being said, when I went back and listened to a lot of those recordings, I was just cringing in some ways. But
oh God, I do that too. Yeah,
gotten over that, and then now, trying to relearn the songs, and also this idea that like, oh, well, I'm going to be able to play this stuff so much better, and I can be more relaxed about the whole thing. But we'll see if that pans out.
Yeah. We will see, and hopefully I get to see here in Seattle. But until then, I'd like to play a tune. I'd like to play First Release off of Sun Boots. Is that cool?
Yeah.
All right, here we go.
Outside my window as they stretch out their lungs. From rooftop to rooftop it would come, with new weather as the blank dormers stare at each other in the thick autumn air. Was that Austin in late '89? Some other place, some other time. Anyway, it doesn't change what I'm trying to say. Just something seems to be missing these days. Come still around, but the band doesn't play. And gone is gone from Discovery Pile. And Chinatown seems like 3 more miles. And I can hardly discern between style of kids' twisted looks, genuine smiles. One kid getting stoned, only to keep things a little more clear. Be able to hold on to a simple idea. When I'm with you, I wanna notice everything as we do. Catch every bit of blur, squint, chill, and red. From sand dunes, San Soleil, and sunset. You know that always both heaven and hell for me. Smash more than one glass gesture of jealousy. Remember 3 to 2 rooms, girlfriends made it more. Plus you always left my singles on the bedroom floor. The bedroom floor. God knows when. Still like to tell me each and every time I mouth off, get out of line. But these days I know how to watch what I say. Though I still do things my own way. Still spin the same sounds for these unsatisfied ears. So there's always something new to hear. You know that always both heaven and hell for me. Spent more than one glass gesture of jealousy. Remember 3 to 2 rooms, girlfriends made it 4. Plus you always left my singles on the bedroom floor. Should not have let that shit go for so cheap. Wish I still had that first relief. Just trying to pay some rent to keep on my feet. Guess there's something I can take from back then. It's something I could leave. Something I could leave. late and sunset. You know that I was both heaven and hell for me. Smash more than one glass gesture of jealousy. Remember 3 to 2 rooms, girlfriends made it more. Plus you've always left my singles on the bedroom floor. Should not have let that shit go for so cheap. Wish I still had that first release. Just trying to pay some rent to keep on my feet. Guess there's something I could take from back then, something I could leave. Something I could leave. Something I could leave. Something I could leave. Something I could leave.
Man, that's an epic journey right there. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, I enjoy that too. It reminded me sort of, I think when Jeff first presented, like, the verses and the choruses, I was like, oh, this is a cool, like, indie rock Thin Lizzy tune or something like that.
I'm with
a
you
reggae
too.
At the same time. I was like, well, I had been, I think, around only listening to reggae at that point.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, let me see if I can do a fake reggae beat in the verses.
Right.
So it was a fun tune.
It captures everything that I love about Crotty, and it is that his vocals are a little Thin Lizzy here and there. We've got a little bit of a dub, There's the couple sections where it's just bass and drums with the 16th note, etc.
Right.
It's really killer. I hope I get to see that. Are you guys practicing that one?
Well, yeah, I've practiced that. Like I had mentioned, I think before we started, that I'd practiced over the weekend, and then last night was actually listening to that song by itself, and it was sort of interesting because when I was practicing, it just felt really like, I think I was probably overplaying or something, but listening back to it, I was like, oh, this is a pretty good take. Everything is pretty tight, and at least from the drums. So that sort of gave me a little perspective on what I need to think about when I'm practicing it. But yeah, that's on the set list.
All right, great. The other thing that just dawned on me in my kind of refreshing myself with your guys' catalog really is the Minutemen aspect. George Hurley and D. Boone and Mike Watt are probably my favorite musicians of all time, collectively and individually. And I'll make up a Minutemen influence sometimes if I hear music. I'm just always thinking about them. And It's so weird. It dawned on me listening to your tunes again. There's some Minutemen in there, at least, or did I make that up?
Well, I don't think you made it up. My perspective on that would be a little bit more vague. I know Farina is a big Minutemen fan. And I think during the time of the band, while I was familiar with parts of Double Nickels on the Dime or whatever, it wasn't, Minutemen were never like a big influence for me. But I still wouldn't be surprised that you would hear something like that, because I know Farina, he grew up with them essentially.
Right. Well, and then I realized in my exploration that you guys did a Fish Tank record, which I did with my band, the Blackheart Procession.
Right.
So that kind of caught my eye, and then I'm looking at the track listing, and you do Bob Dylan wrote propaganda songs, which another band of mine, Magic Magicians, we did that same cover.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So I was like, wow, my worlds are colliding.
So you did Fish Tank, was that with the X, or who did you collaborate with?
We collaborated with Solbakken, and it was such a fun day. How long did your Fish Tank collaboration take?
I think it was just a day. We collaborated with ourselves, obviously. Yeah, there wasn't anybody else.
Oh.
It was, I think we just said, well, hey, we just want to do covers or something. And
was it out in the farm?
Somewhere in the middle of, some field in the Netherlands somewhere. In a massive studio.
Yeah, as we talk about this, I feel like you and I must have operated at the same time through the same channels. Maybe we were just going the opposite way every time. I don't know if we've met, but it seems like well, to start, it seems like karate possibly looked to Louisville and Chicago for a little influence in the 90s, which is exactly what us Seattleites did too.
I would say that's sort of true. I think though, for me and Jeff, we are mid-Atlantic East Coasters. So for me, getting into rock music, it was definitely all DC hardcore and Philadelphia area and some Baltimore stuff. I grew up in Baltimore, and Jeff is from just north of there in central Pennsylvania. And then he lived in DC for a little while, I think right after college. So I think, early on as kids, we were sort of, East Coasters. And then, of course, in the 90s or whatever, there was certainly tons of stuff coming out of Chicago that was super interesting. And obviously they have their own history of a punk rock scene. And of course, then there was the Louisville thing in the 90s too. So, it's all of it, really.
Yeah.
I listened to all of it.
And did you do a lot of touring in Europe, as I did in, I'd say, 98 to 2004 or something?
Yeah, that was those. Not only were those the exact years that karate was touring a lot, but we couldn't go over there and not hear about the Black Heart Procession all the time.
Yes.
So, it sounded like you guys were over there a lot.
We were over there a lot, and that was the first and maybe only time I've felt like a rock star in my life, especially playing in Italy. We would just play these shows, and it was like, who the fuck knows about our band? And it's like, thousands of people at our shows in a abandoned castle or something.
Well, the similarities here continue because Italy was the same situation for us. I have this distinct memory in 98 of our first, we had played in this little community center in Slovenia, and a couple Italian guys had come and they're like, oh, just wait till you get to Italy. And we're like, well, oh shit, what's going to happen? And then we played our first show. It was just like nuts. And people were going crazy. And we're like, wow, okay, this is going to be good. So Italy was very good to us and still is. I mean, we're going to go play a handful of shows there in August.
I'm so lucky. I hope that comes back in my life one way or another. Maybe drum teching for you. I'm not quite sure. But
I don't have much to work with.
Oh,
but
great.
the funny thing, yeah, it's easier for you. The funny thing about when I have gone back there with other bands, it never quite, it wasn't the same. And obviously because it's different bands. And
sure.
Sort of what did remain was the sense of occasional chaos with the scheduling or something, some PA blowing up being late. I mean, there was a good story, I would say, is when I first went back there with, I was playing in a band called E, and we were going to go to Italy. And I was sort of saying, okay, well, get ready for the chaos. It's fun, but it can be really wild. And so our first show of that tour was actually going to be in Venice, where I'd never played in Venice. And the process to get there was, we had to go to this big loading dock on the water, and the weather was it was 40 degrees and gale force, hurricane. And we had to load all of our gear 10 feet down into a boat during this storm and then cruise in the boat with the gear. And we showed up soaking wet. Everything is wet. One of the band members is getting super pissed about the whole thing. And I'm just like, well, this is how things can happen in Italy. It can get hectic. The band was fighting because someone was super pissed off about we shouldn't have to deal with this shit. Right. And of course, you don't want to deal with that stuff, but it's adventure. It's adventure.
It really is adventure. Yeah.
By the end of the night, everybody had their fair share of wine, and it turned out the club owner was a master hand drummer from Iran or something like this.
Oh, wow.
We were sitting in a circle, this guy's playing, and my mind is just going, oh my God, this guy was incredible. So it's just one
That's
of
what
those
happens
nights.
there. It's what fucking happens there. It's
Yeah.
Yeah, I off the top of my head, there's a million different day-to-day stories, but I kind of I'll leave Auto Grill out because I talk about Auto Grill all the time. But yeah, Italy is unpredictable,
Mhm.
and if you have good shows there, to me, it's like the best place to be. And
Yeah.
I want to give my example of the chaos of Italy, the fun chaos of Italy is the Black Harp Session was at a big dinner before the show, of course. And it's taken forever, and it's really fun. And we don't care that much. We're with the promoter. We're over being too full for the show. We're just like, who gives it? Fuck that rule. We'll just be too full for the show or whatever, you know?
Right.
So we're there. And then it's like, it gets to a point where it's pretty late. I think we have to
Yeah.
play in a half hour. And the PA wasn't working when we left. We didn't have a sound check. So we went to the big long dinner, and the promoter looks at me and goes, "Oh my God, we really only have a half hour, and it's about a 20-minute drive." And I'm like, okay. So we leave the table in a rush, and we pile in a car, and we're driving, and then there's two people in the front speaking Italian. They pull over at a gas station, and I'm like, oh, we need gas. And I look at the thing, and there's gas in this car. And they get us out, and Paul's laughing, and he's like, "What are we doing? We have to get to the show." He's like, "We have to get espresso."
I mean, it's almost like it's hard to believe that story only because it's so like stereotypical.
We get out, fucking stand at the bar, drink our espresso. They kind of hurry us, and they tell us to relax, and they kind of hurry us. And then, of course,
Right.
we get there, and the PA's not working still anyways. But
my other impression was in general of Italy when those kinds of things are happening, the promoter and whoever else seem to be yelling at each other, right?
yes,
Like, and then I'm always like, are they mad at us for something?
right. I know.
Like, are they just like talking? Are they mad? They're always somebody's yelling at somebody.
Yeah.
So it can get pretty as you know, hedonistic
Yes.
with some of those things.
I just need to do it at least a few more times in my life.
Yeah.
Well, also, speaking of playing over in Europe, I listened to the 595 record, which I had never listened to, which is in Belgium.
Yeah.
Live show from Belgium, right?
Yeah, Leuven, Belgium, I think, which is right outside of Brussels.
There's a song on there, In Hundreds,
Mm-hmm.
that I went back and forth. I love the live version, and I can't remember if I was familiar with the studio version, but I went back and listened to the studio version, and the studio version is great. And typically, I don't love live versions of rock bands, historically, for myself. But that fucking live version is magic. And it's fun to listen to both the studio and the live version back to back. But all the sparkle and, God, it's just incredible.
Cool. Yeah, I haven't heard that as of late.
Yeah. Did you guys track live in the studio?
Generally, yeah. I mean, we'd play the song without vocals, and occasionally maybe Farina would drop out to overdub a solo.
Sure. Would you say you're more of a live band or a studio band, or?
No, I mean, I think we were definitely a live band. I mean, I think my impression was it was just more rockin' or whatever, when we would play live. And, the studio versions, I think the studio records are generally, particularly the later ones, are very accurate in capturing what we sounded like in that room at that time. But live was definitely, I think we all would agree that we were a live band as opposed to a studio band,
Right. Yeah, and it's not a diss on that again on that studio version.
Yeah, I mean the live record in concept is a little odd, and it does always sort of leave. It always comes out after the studio record,
right?
So you always have to compare it to the studio version, and most of the time they don't sound as good as you like, and
Sure.
I mean, I guess the live record is a little fraught with weirdness to begin with. So,
Sure.
you know.
Well, 595 kills it. So,
Well, I guess the live milieu, I was really happy with how that came out. We do sound pretty good,
yeah.
as a band. And the funny thing was, after that show ended, I thought we had played terribly, which goes to show, how one's perception of what they're doing might not at all be accurate in the moment. I remember I was super tired. It was at the end of a long tour. I think even like some of my hardware was failing and I was getting pissed, if I recall. I was like, whatever. And then, whenever we heard the record, I was like, whoa, this is that show. I think like, oh, maybe I should just be tired all the time and that will make me play better.
I know. For my playing, I'd like to master it, basically putting, if I'm tired or distracted by a certain amount of things, then I don't have to pay attention to my playing as much. And like you're saying, that's when you potentially just are just playing.
Yeah.
I need to be playing on less of a cerebral level at times, and it drives me fucking nuts when I am.
Yeah. There's definitely something to say for detachment.
Yeah.
At a certain point. I mean, obviously, when you're young and you're starting out, you are going to think, probably overthink things, or you're trying as opposed to just doing.
Yeah.
I mean, I hear that a lot in the karate stuff. Why was I trying to put all these little notes and then like trying to be clever, and then I'm listening, it's like the beat, like where's the beat? It's like should just play a beat and not worry about like trying to be clever or just barely pulling off little things that didn't even need to be tried and stuff.
Man.
So
I am so guilty of that stuff.
yeah.
Well, when does your tour start?
We are starting, I believe, July 6th here in Boston.
And you'll make it to the West Coast shortly after?
Yeah, we're going to do 5 shows here, I guess, on the East Coast. We are going to go to Chicago to do 2 shows. And then we're going to fly to Seattle and do Seattle, Portland, San Francisco, Los Angeles.
All right. Great. All right, man. Well, I'll let you go, and I'll look for you in July.
All right, man.
Take care of yourself. Travel safe if you travel.
Will do. Thanks, Joe.
Sure. Bye.
tongue test, sickness, love, in these hands. Sudden number for answers in hundreds. I said prayer, missed some train, lost some friends, some forgave. In the end, I don't want to tell you you're the reason why, but you're just a couple minutes shy of changing things for good. I want to put aside this poison, like I always knew I should, knew I should. Gently pretends to be the end, to be an end. What you can't see, I don't want to give it away, but things look good for the rest of the day. And now I trust a shiver to bring this body's bad news. Voices might consider that it's my time and let me choose. And I don't worry too much about what I really have to lose. That surely give it all up if it meant some time with you.
Thanks a lot. It's called In Hundreds.